Welcome to Banff National Park. We got a lot of snow last night. Whole lot of snow.
Theoretically, we could move a lot quicker, but we could also move a lot slower.
I just feel like if we kind of go back now, it's going to be late by the time we get back. This is how the pros do it.
Taking in the view.
Look at this, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's about time your ass goes in. Yeah, thanks for the advice.
Shortcuts with Dan.
See what we can do out here in this winter wonderland.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of my post-adventure debrief, a little video podcast that I've been doing where I break down one of my recent adventures in the backcountry and show you all of the stats, the elevation, how many miles where I camped, the food, the gear, the everything for all of you trip logistics nerds out there. You guys have asked me to do this for years, and I think this is about the third episode that I've done. Well, I just returned from a trip up in the Great White North in the Canadian Rockies. I shot up to Calgary last week and went up to visit Dan Durston at Durston Gear in Golden, Colorado. And then after doing some stuff at Durston Gear and kind of getting a tour and checking some stuff out at his facility, we decided to head into the Banff National Park right in between Calgary and Golden and do a 2-night, 3-day backpacking trip. And this trip was very different from anything that I've really done lately in the backcountry in the winter. There was a lot of snow, obviously Canadian Rockies in the winter, and we used backcountry skis. So it was a bit of a backcountry ski tour trip. Now I do plan on putting out a full video of everything that I actually shot up at Durston Gear, doing a full tour of their facility, looking at some of the new products that he's been working on. So that should be coming out about next week, but this is specifically breaking down all the logistics of the trip that we did. So I guess to jump right into it, I routed everything out before we hit the trail with Onyx Backcountry as I usually do. So I've been using Onyx Backcountry to route all of my trips from the desktop version, and then I'm able to put it on my phone and then use it while I'm out on trail. So Dan and I routed everything out the night before we went out and hit the trail. The idea of the trip was to get out, use part of the Great Divide Trail, because I've been trying to get out and do the Great Divide Trail for years. He's a big fan of the Great Divide Trail. Get into the Canadian Rockies, spend a little time in Banff National Park, and be out for 2 nights and 3 days using backcountry skis and getting into some deep winter and getting a view of what's supposed to be one of the biggest beautiful mountains out there, Mount Assiniboine. So I ended up actually flying up to Canada about a week ago up to Calgary, and then the Durston headquarters is actually over here in Golden, Colorado. So where we decided to kind of have an adventure was right there in the middle. So he picked me up in Calgary. We drove out to Golden, shot everything at the Durston facility. Then we came about halfway back around Banff to a small town called Canmore, which is right here, which is kind of where we based everything out of. Stayed there for the night, planned out the trip with him, got all of our gear together, and then we headed out. Speaking of gear, if you want to check out the gear that I used for this trip, I'll leave a link down in the description box to my website for my full gear list of everything that I carried, from kind of my typical winter backpacking setup to a new tent that I was testing and my backcountry ski setup. So all that is down in that link. So if we kind of cruise in here, you can see we were in Canmore, and on last Sunday, we got up in the morning. We went and did a little bit of a resupply at a store, or I guess a supply, if you will, not a resupply, got some food, and then headed out here into this kind of reservoir in this beautiful valley, a lake called Spray Lake Reservoir. And we ended up starting here at this trailhead, which is called Mount Shark Trailhead. So I kept saying Shark Week Trailhead.
Mount Shark.
Mount Shark.
Mount Shark.
Shark, that sounds like, sounds intense. Extreme.
It might be. Yeah.
Shark Week.
Which is only at 5,747 feet. What's really crazy about the Canadian Rockies in this area is the mountains look so much bigger than that. So even though it's like when you're in the US Rockies, those mountains go up to like 14,000 feet, but you're also up much higher. This trailhead being at 4,700 feet, or I'm sorry, 5,700 feet, and those mountains being just over 9,000, the sheer face on these mountains was magnificent. They were absolutely beautiful. So what I ended up routing out was for us to have about 14, so we'll say 15 miles, 14.9 miles from the parking lot all the way out to get a view of Mount Cinnabon out here at this Lake Magog. And here, I'll show you what Mount Cinnabon looks like on here. So as you can see, Cinnabon is pretty Assiniboine. I know I'm butchering this, and I'm probably going to get a lot of crap from Canadians down in the comments, so I'm sorry. I was actually calling it Mount Cinnabon, like a Cinnabon.
Yeah, you got it. You're nailing it.
Mount Assiniboine.
So here is Mount Assiniboine, which is just under 12,000 feet, 11,870 feet. But that was the goal. We wanted to get this view of this magnificent peak that's right there on the Great Divide. So the plan was to kind of get here into one of these meadows, like this O'Brien's Meadow, which you can see I had placed a camp spot at. Now, per usual, like winter trips typically go, things don't 100% go as planned, and I'll talk about what didn't go as planned on this trip. That being said, we still got out to our goal, just not the way we thought. So I had placed a camp here in this valley for night 1, and then I had placed this camp for night 2, and then the idea was to turn around and do all of this and come back out on night 3. As you can see from the elevation and everything, we were mainly in this valley, kind of in this really nice, beautiful valley surrounded by these massive peaks, these massive mountains, or as they call it, rocks. You see like Cascade Rock here. It just looked like a mountain that you would see like in the Himalaya or something, but they call it a rock. So mainly through this valley, and then really the biggest part of the elevation was kind of right in here going up to this pass, passing from Alberta into British Columbia. So that's kind of the big divide right there between the two. So our total elevation gain for the trip was 2,084 feet. As you can see from the elevation graph here, most of that was right there towards getting up to that pass. So pretty steep going up through there. So if I kind of go all the way back here to where we started that day back here at the Mount Shark trailhead, and the whole plan was to start out on some Nordic tracks. So really a place that a lot of people go out and just Nordic ski. So pretty flat. I think they were a lot of old like Forest Service roads that they had converted to Nordic ski tracks during the winter. But the issue that we had starting off that day, we got started about 11:30 a.m., was it was so warm in that area, kind of unseasonably warm, that the snow was sticking to the bottom of our skis within that first 3 to 5 miles. So we were getting a ton of globbing on our skis, which was slowing us down pretty hardcore. Now, the skis that I took were these trekking skis, these Altai Hoaks or Hawks, where they have a permanent skin on the bottom, and Dan was using a more of kind of your traditional Nordic cross-country ski that had a fish scale on the bottom. So he was able to move a little faster than I was, I think, but with the warm temps, within that first 3 or 5 miles, we were going super slow. I think every quarter mile, we were having to stop and like kind of scrape the snow off the bottom of our ski because it was just sticking to it. So we did the best that we could, and all of this was pretty flat. We got to this point about right here, and then we did a bit of downhill until we got to this Spray River. Now, right before we hit that downhill, we ended up running into some Nordic skiers that gave us some glide wax that we were actually able to put on the bottom of our skis, and it helped massively. Going down that hill, I think I was probably going a little bit too fast, and I was humbled very quickly and learned that number one, I'm not a downhill skier at all. Number two, these skis are not made for downhill. I think Dan was having a pretty good time with that. And then we got down here to the Spray River, and this is where we were able to jump on the Great Divide Trail. I've been trying to get up and do the Great Divide Trail for 5 years. So I was super jacked to get on the Great Divide Trail and just experience a section of it because I've been dreaming of through hiking that trail for years. Dan has spent a ton of time on the Great Divide Trail. He's through hiked it a couple times, I believe. So it was cool to be out there, and he knows a lot about the area, so that was fun. So when we got to the Great Divide Trail, we kind of had to make a decision. A couple things were going on. Number one, the globbing was slowing us down, so we weren't making the miles that we needed to make to get to that first camp spot for the night. Number two, because I made a very terrible decision of taking a pair of brand new boots that I don't typically use out with me, I was getting some really gnarly hot spots on my heels and I could already feel them. So it was getting later. We weren't making the miles. We were getting a lot of globbing, so it was slowing us down. And I was dealing with some heel stuff. When we got to the Great Divide Trail, we kind of had to make a decision whether we were going to go for it and still trying to make it to Mount Assiniboine, or if we were going to turn around and try to do a different trip. And we decided to go for it. So we ended up getting on the Great Divide Trail. And the good thing was, by the time we got on the Great Divide Trail, the snow seemed like it was, I don't know, colder, if that makes any sense. The area was colder, so we weren't globbing as much, not to mention the glide wax that we had put on. So we ended up actually starting to make some miles. As you can see, we were cruising through this beautiful valley right here, just looking up at these big monster faces, these big peaks. But we had quite a bit of ways to go to get to our campsite. And needless to say, we did not make it. On the Great Divide Trail and out in this area, you can see there's some different camp spots that you have to camp at. So a lot of different little camp spots. Here's one right here. This Big Springs BR9 camp. So we cruised past that. We decided not to stay there. It was getting kind of late, but we decided to keep pushing it past that. And we ended up getting all the way out right about here. So there's a McBride's camp at BR14. And then right past it, there was this little cabin. So we ended up finding this warden's cabin, which is basically for the backcountry warden that kind of spends the summer there, protects the trail, cleans up the trail. It was closed down, but we got to that cabin. It was about 6:30 p.m. Like I said, we started about 11:30. 6:30, we had only made about 8 or 9 miles. I think it was maybe a little closer to 9 miles to this area. And we decided to go just past that into this little thing of trees right here and ended up placing camp. So we got there, there was a lot of snow, a whole lot of snow, and it was some super sugary snow, so it wouldn't really pack down. So I tried to pack it down with my skis a lot to be able to set my tent, having a hard time. So I actually had to shovel out quite a bit of snow to get it flat enough, able to set my tent up. We ate dinner, sat around for a little bit. It started getting crazy windy because a winter storm was moving in that night. So we decided to hunker down. I got in between some trees where my tent was, got some sleep that night. When we woke up the next morning, we had about 6 or 7 fresh inches of snow. So it dumped a lot. Completely covered our tracks on the way there. And then we knew that it was going to be a haul to try to get all the way from there. So you can see right here, all the way out here, past where we were originally planning on camping. And then basically to at least where we were planning on camping for the second night so we could get that view of Assiniboine, which you can see right there. So here's Assiniboine up here, and then there was the camp. So because of that, because there was a lot of fresh snow, because we knew that we were in for a heavy day, we decided to keep our camp in the same place. That next morning we woke up, we had coffee, we had breakfast, but we left our tents up. We left our sleep systems inside of the tents, grabbed everything else in our pack, and we took off to try to make our goal of getting to O'Brien Meadows to be able to see Mount Assiniboine. So we spent that morning breaking trail and kind of cruising through this beautiful valley. Lucky enough, after the snow had stopped, the sky started to open up and we could really get a view of these big, beautiful mountains. And it's funny, if you look here on the map, they call this stuff Cascade Rock. So this thing was called a rock. And this, what is it? Gibraltar, I can't even say that. Gibraltar rock. These things were monsters. Even though they were just over 9,000 feet, they looked like they could have been 16,000 feet. It looked like something you would see in the Himalayas, these massive, beautiful rock faces. So most of the morning, getting these amazing views, cruising through this valley. We went past where our original camp spot was for that first night. And then right when we got up to about this point, it was about noon. And as you can see here on the elevation graph, this is when it starts to get spicy. So right at about that 10-mile mark, everything just goes straight up to this pass where you can see the Alberta and British Columbia kind of line there, the divide. And that's kind of where we were going to get our first view of Mount Assiniboine. So going up this hill to this pass, number one was way steeper than I thought it had been, or I thought it was going to be. So as you can see, like here on the elevation graph, for most of it, like we were pretty flat. We go up a little bit, kind of like right before we got to camp, but then everything else in that morning was completely flat. So that 2,084 feet of elevation gain, most of that, the majority of that was done in just this little bitty part right here. And I tell you what, in 3 miles, 2,000 feet of elevation gain, crazy deep snowpack, breaking trail with cross-country skis was a mission. A mission. It took us forever to get up to that pass. So we were pretty slow going, breaking a lot of trail, sinking in a lot. And then not to mention, because I decided to use these boots, I had some really big hot spots on the back of my heels. I was getting some really bad blisters. So every time that I was lifting up my heel to kind of glide and go up and climbing, especially when like my heels would sit back in that heel cup, it was absolute torture. Hurt really, really bad. So I was having a hell of a time getting up this climb, but we got up, we got all the way up here to the pass, Assiniboine Pass. And then once we got up here, we looked out and we didn't get much of a view. A lot of trees were in the way, but the clouds were socking the mountains in pretty hardcore. So we decided to ski down here to this O'Brien Meadow, where we had planned on camping that second night, and looked up into the mountains from here. As you can see, we could see this guy over here. We could see this one, barely, but Mount Assiniboine was gone, just completely socked in with the clouds. So we went all that way, fought all that snow, did all that climbing, and didn't get a view of the mountain that we went out for. So yeah, it was a bit of a, kind of one of those things that just, sometimes that's what happens. You fight for it, you struggle, you go through the motions, you work for it, and you don't get a view. And that's what happened to us, unfortunately. But that being said, it was still a great trip. We had a fun time that day, even though we were breaking trail, even though the snow was kicking our ass. And then once we turned around, I was, to say the least, humbled, very humbled for the next 2 to 3 miles, because number one, I am not a skier. I'm not a downhill skier. Number two, the skis that I have are not really made for going downhill. So for the next 2 or 3 miles, I had my ass handed to me. I ate it a lot going downhill. These things just don't handle. They don't really turn that well. So I went into a lot of different snowbanks. I struggled a lot. And Dan had a pretty good time with that, I think, to see me get my ass kicked. So it took us a while to get down this big pass, this hill. But once we got back in the valley, it was pretty smooth sailing all the way back through the valley again to get all the way back to our camp. Look right there. Got there. It was pretty late. We got there at about 6:30, just like the day before. Ate dinner, got a really amazing view of the mountains at night because it was way clearer, and then hit the hay, got up the next morning to make our way out. Again, third day was absolutely beautiful, a little bit warmer. And then really from there all the way out until like the Great Divide Trail, we were breaking trail again, because when we came in and it snowed that 6 or 7 inches, nobody else had come behind us or come out there. So we were breaking trail most of the morning. We got all the way back out here, all the way back through this valley, and got right here to the Spray River where we connected back with the Nordic track, leaving the Great Divide Trail. And then basically from there all the way back to the car. Unfortunately, it was a slog again. Not only did we have a lot of uphill to do again, but the snow, it wasn't sticking to our skis as bad. So it wasn't doing the globbing as bad as it was the 2 days before, but we couldn't get any glide. So it took quite a bit. We were putting out a lot of effort on pretty flat ground, which was kind of crazy. But we got all the way back out to the Shark Mountain Trailhead at about 2:30, 3 o'clock, and that concluded our trip. So we didn't get an amazing view of Mount Assiniboine. We didn't get to the Camp 1 and Camp 2 spots that we had planned on doing. However, we got out for 2 nights. We got out for 3 days. We got into some deep snow. We had a mission. We got to the pass that we were trying to get to at least try to get a view of Mount Assiniboine, and we had a pretty damn good time. So overall, I would say it was a super fun trip. I got super humbled, learned a lot about these skis, and learned a lot about not taking a new pair of boots out. This should be hiking and backpacking 101, but I just didn't listen to logic. I took these out and I paid for it dearly. So that was my trip up to the beautiful Canadian Rockies with Dan Durston. Like I said, I plan on putting out a full video of everything that I went up there to do, to take a tour of the Durston facility and all of that stuff. And I plan on putting that video out next week, so keep an eye out for that. I think as far as food, water, gear, would there be anything that I would change? Well, as far as water goes, there was plenty of water, whether it was from a small stream or one of these small rivers, or melting a lot of snow. I melted a lot of snow while I was out there at camp. And then as far as gear goes, really the only 2 new things that I was really trying out for the first time was the tent that I tried, which was the Durston X-Dome 1 Plus. Now, I did not have the solid inner version. I had the regular mesh inner version, and it was great. I didn't get cold. It was plenty warm at night in my quilt and my sleeping pad that I usually take. But I think if I was going to do it again, I would like to try the solid inner. Now, Dan had the solid inner, and he said that he stayed very warm inside of it. So it's something I wish that I could have used, but he only had one of them. So I really dug the X-Dome 1 Plus. I'll be talking about that more in next week's video, but that was a great tent to try out. So I was happy with that selection. And then I learned a lot with these as far as if I knew that I was going to be going and doing so much downhill, I would probably not take these skis. I would probably take a more traditional Nordic cross-country ski or backcountry ski versus these because, again, they did not handle well downhill, and I got humbled quite a bit by them. Oh, and then the boots, right? I would never, ever take a fresh pair of boots out to do a Nordic backcountry ski trip again. That was a very dumb decision, and again, I'm still paying for it. So as far as food goes and all of that, it was great, and I don't think that I would change anything. So again, if you want to check out that full gear list of everything that I carried on the trip with the new tent, the cross-country skis, and my typical winter backpacking kit, I'll leave a link to my website down below so you can go check that out. And then as far as Onyx Backcountry goes, the navigation software that I used to route this full trip that we used while we were out there, if you guys want to check out Onyx, if you want to support my channel, check out my link down below to get a free trial of Onyx Backcountry. And then if you really want to step up your navigation game, if you want to do routing and trips like this, sign up for 20% off of a full subscription to it. It is 100% worth it. I have used this so much over just the last few months, and it makes it just really great to be able to plan out the trip, know where I'm going to be camping, and then if I got to change it on the fly, I can pull that up on my phone once I download it and do everything from my phone. So check that out down below if you want to get a subscription to Onyx Backcountry. And I can't thank Onyx enough for supporting me and the channel and this new video series that I've been doing. So all right, guys, there you go. My super fun backcountry, humbling ski trip in the Canadian Rockies. It was a super fun time. Thank you, Dan, for coming out and hanging out with me and being miserable with me in the super cold backcountry. I'm really looking forward to getting up there and doing some more stuff. Maybe this fall, maybe next year, like next summer. I got something that I'm kind of planning that I'm thinking about. So I'll leave that as a tease for now. We'll see what happens later. All right, guys. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of each other. I plan on doing many more of these post-trip debriefs. So if you like this, leave me a comment. Give me a thumbs up. Do all that stuff that people do. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I love you guys. And as always, thanks for watching.